I was born in Brooklyn, New York, 20 minutes from Lubavitch headquarters. I was born to Italian Catholic parents. My mother was born in Italy. My grandparents were born in Italy. My father was born in the Lower East Side. But I was born in that neighborhood where I was born because it was an Italian Jewish neighborhood. And I was raised Roman Catholic, and I went to parochial school. And the Italian Jewish neighborhood, my best friend was Jewish. And we went everywhere together. We played baseball together. We played hockey together. We went to all the games together. And I even went to, when I was growing up, I went to bar mitzvahs. I went to, bris milas. I went to Jewish weddings. I ate Jewish food. I ate in his house. I ate kosher food. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. I was eating kosher food, and we were going to different things together. I went to a synagogue, but I went to Catholic parochial school. So I couldn't play on Sunday, and I couldn't understand why he couldn't play on Saturday. But the rest of the week, we were good friends. And he couldn't eat in my house. That was the one I really couldn't understand. But I ate his food. But we stayed best friends until I went to high school. So I was going to Catholic schools. I had nuns, priests, Franciscan teaching nuns and priests. And by the 6th grade, I got thrown out of a special class. I was put in a special class. I don't know if you know, I was an altar boy. And altar boy wears the little white gown, special hat, and he speaks in Latin, and he helps the priest on the Sunday services. So I was a pretty good kid when it came to my religion, and when it came to my studies, I excelled in most of my studies. And then they put me in a special class where they mix boys and girls, which is not normal to do. And you go for one day a week, you go to the priest, he gives a lecture, and then you get to mix and have some entertainment after the class. But during those classes, I asked a lot of questions, and I was always asking questions. And in the Catholic Church at that time, when you ask too many questions, they don't like it. And I asked a few questions during the first time I was in the class, and they threw me out. They said, "We don't ask those questions here. You're out of here." So, and I didn't get to go to that special class anymore. And then one of the things I asked them was about confessing to a priest. And I said, "Why do I have to confess to you in a little black box on Saturday afternoon? And you forgive my sins. I thought there was nobody that can go between me and God. Why do I need you?" He said, "Because that's the way it is." And I said, "And I come in there and you promise never to tell anybody what my sins were, or you just say that you forget them." I said, "I don't believe you. I think if I tell you something, you're going to go home and tell my mother." And all the boys in my neighborhood, we would get together on Saturday afternoon, and what we would do is make up sins, make up stuff that we would tell this guy in the little black box, because we were afraid to tell him what we really did, so we made up stuff. And then if he went and told somebody, he said, "We didn't do that." Okay, that's how. And then I asked another question on the sacraments, and then he said, "You don't need to. You're a wise guy. You don't need to be in this class." So I went on. By the 8th grade, I really excelled, and I knew my catechism, and I knew all the religious studies that I was supposed to know by the 8th grade. The nuns came to my father, and the priest came to my mother and father, and they said every Italian Catholic family should have a priest, and we want him to be a priest. And they agreed, and they had me scheduled for the best Catholic high school in the state of New York, the best Catholic seminary in the state of New York, and they were going to send me, and I was going to come back to that neighborhood, and I was going to be a teaching Franciscan priest. And everything was all arranged, and it was great. My whole life was arranged. But by the 8th grade, I decided I didn't want to be a priest anymore. Because people look inside, and people look and say, "I want this, I want that." And people look at you and say, "You should be this and that." They saw a priest inside. But what does God want in your life? And I said, "I don't know. But I know one thing. I don't want to be a priest." In the middle of the 8th grade, I decided I wanted to be an engineer. So I decided I didn't want to be a priest. And now you can't go tell your parents or the nuns you don't want to be a priest. I want to be an engineer. So I went off and I took the test to the best public engineering school in the state of New York, Brooklyn Technical High School, and I passed the test, and I held that letter of acceptance the whole summer until I had enough courage to tell my mother I'm going to public school. And as a Catholic, going to public school is a no. It just doesn't happen. You got to go to Catholic schools. And so they called the nuns and the priests, and they started to talk to me, and I said, "I'm not doing it. I'm not going to go. I'm going to go to public school." And the nuns and the priests told my parents that I would never amount to anything, and that I was on a road paved to you-know-where. And, here I am today. I'm what we call a simple Jew. A simple Jew. Pasha the Jew, a simple Jew, and here I am, a simple Jew. And to me, that's amounting to anything there is in the whole world. It's not a nothing; it's a something to me. And if to them, if this is a nothing, fine, I'll be a nothing for the rest of my life. It's the greatest thing that can ever be is a simple Jew. And so, I went on to high school and college. I graduated. I became an engineer, but I didn't want to work inside. You can't put me in a box. I can't stand still. I don't want to work in a room. I wanted to be outside, so I went into the outside construction field, and I went into project management, and I went all over the country working jobs. I started at the bottom, and then I wound up being a project manager. And I worked in New York, and I worked in Texas, and I worked in Florida and California. I worked all over the United States. And then, we got to speed up the years a little bit. Before that, at 21, I left the Catholic Church because you stay home with your parents. You're in an Italian home. You live in your parents' home. You have to do what they say until 21. And they went to Catholic Church. I had to go with them. But the day I turned 21, I said, I'm never going back to Catholic Church again. So I wouldn't go back to a Catholic church. And then I was working. Then you get married. And then you have children. And everything's going good. And, you have a house. You have cars. You have money in the bank. Everything is fine. But something was missing inside. Something was missing after these years. And so in the mid-'80s, something's missing, and you don't know what it is, and you got this feeling of emptiness. And my wife and I had this thing inside that said, what do we do now? We're missing something. Everything is great, and it's just like today they call it spirituality. Everybody goes around the world, searching for spirituality. I worked in Israel. I had the merit to work in Israel in 2002, 3, 4. I worked on 9 Air Force bases, 9 Air Force bases, 17 projects, and 2 Army bases. And then I got transferred to Pearl Harbor, and I worked in the nuclear sub dry docks. And so I had the privilege of working in Israel and meeting all these Israeli soldiers and all these Israeli young people. And then I came from America, and then I would take some home in the car every Thursday night. They would go get dropped off hitchhiking, and they'd say, oh, something's missing here. We can't wait to get out. You're from America. We want to go to America. I said, what are you going to go to America for? I said, we're missing something. Oh, what are you missing? I don't know, but we'll find it. And they come, and it's really amazing. They go to New York. They fly to New York. From there, they stay a few weeks, and then they wind up in Chicago. And from Chicago, they go to California. From California, they go to Hawaii. There's 10,000 Israelis in Hawaii. And sometimes they go the other way. They go to the India, Malaysia. They come around. They're all going this way and that way, that way. And they're searching. And then if you stay in Israel long enough, which I did, and you stay in Israel long enough, if you're one day in Jerusalem, if you're one day at the Western Wall, the Kollel, and you'll see some of these guys coming back, and they say, we found it. What'd you found? We found spirituality. Where'd you find it? Right here in Yerushalayim. And I said, you were born here, and you went all around the world, and I could have told you to stay here in the first place. Or they go up in a northern city called Sfat, and they find it. And after going, 24,000 miles around the world, then they find their spirituality. But we were searching. We didn't call it spirituality in those days. We called it God. We need God in our lives. And to us, where do you find God? Where do you find God? And we didn't know. God's not in the car. God's not in the streets. God is not in the, in a lunchroom somewhere. God is, the only place God is in the church. So you got to go to a church. That's where you find God. So we figured we'd search in a church for God. And there we were. And I said, I'll never go to a Catholic church again because I don't want to. But I know let's go to a Protestant church. And and we didn't know from Protestant churches because when I grew up, you couldn't go near a Protestant. You couldn't talk to a Protestant person. If there was a Protestant school or a building on the same street that you were walking down, you had to go across the street or around the block. It was like that. That's the way we were raised. And the Protestant people were the bad people, and we were the good guys. I had no. But anyway, so I said, I'm going to go to a Protestant church. Why? Because the Protestant church protested against the Catholic church. Martin Luther started the Protestant Reformation. I said, I'm a good protester. I'm a good rebeller. I'll go. And so I had nothing. I had no idea what a Protestant church was. So I looked in the phone book, and all the Catholic churches have the same. You got to go to the S section: St. Mary, St. Joseph, and that's easy to find. But if you want a Protestant church in America, I don't know what they are here, but in America, you want a Protestant church, you opened up the phone book, and you can start with Assembly of God, Northern Assembly, Southern Assembly, Baptist, First Baptist, Second Baptist, Episcopalian, Lutheran, Calvinist, all these lists of churches. And I said, I don't want to go to a big church because I don't want to be connected like the Catholic church is all connected big. I said, I want a little church. So I kept looking, and I saw this thing, non-denominational evangelical church. I said, that looks good. Non-denominational, looks small. So that's the church we picked, and that's where we started growing and going and finding God. Except we got duped. The non-denominational evangelical church in America is one of the biggest denominations there is. And so there I was in this church, and we walked in, and the pastor was really nice, and it was 325 families were in California, 325 families in the church. And they welcomed us, and we started going, and we felt good. We felt like family. And I was working. I was as an engineer in a construction project, and working all day and going a couple of nights a week and going on Sundays, and then kids, and then you started to learn a little bit, and then they started giving you some responsibilities like cleaning the church, and then they started giving you a little more responsibility. You can teach Sunday school, and you start to grow and you start to learn. And one thing they gave me that the Catholic Church didn't give me, they gave me what they call the Bible, and they gave me the King James Authorized Version called the Bible. The Catholic Church at that time, I think it's changed now. I haven't kept up with anything since 13, 14, 15 years ago. I haven't kept anything up with that type of systems. So Catholic Church didn't give you a Bible. They give you what is called a catechism, which is the rules and all the bylaws and all the principles of the Catholic Church. But the Protestant Church, they give you a Bible, the Authorized King James Version Bible. And I have to tell you, just like I tell everybody else, the Bible they use, they call it it's an Old Testament and a New Testament, two halves. And the Old Testament is the Jewish Tanakh. It's our Bible. It's our Torah. It's the 5 books of Moses, and then all the prophets, and then all the writings. And then attached to that, they put on the life of the leader of the Christian church and the disciples and all the writings, and they attach it to the Old Testament, and they call that the New Testament, and they call the whole thing the Bible. Now, I'm here. I don't attest to there is such a thing as the New Testament, Old Testament. There is a Torah. There is a Tanakh. There is the Jewish Torah. That was the 5 books given to Moses Rabbeinu, Moses, our teacher, at Mount Sinai. And there is the prophets, and there's the writings. There's no such thing as the New Testament. Why they put New Testament attached to the Old Testament? So they call old. They can call our Tanakh old, which means there's no relevance today, which means that old means it's dead, it's gone, and it's only a history book. But what pertains and what's real and what is modern scripture and what is should be in everybody's life is the New Testament. And I'm here and I'm telling the Jewish people there is no such thing as an Old Testament. Then the Old Testament is not dead. There's no such. It's the Tanakh. It's the Torah. It's the Torah that was given to Moses at Sinai over 3,500 years ago. It's the same Torah that 600,000 men of fighting age heard, and at one time about 1,800,000 people heard that voice of God give them the Torah, and that Torah was passed on from generation to generation to generation until it got down to us. And that Torah is alive and well, and it's our connection, it's our life as a Jewish people, as a Jewish nation. And we're the only nation in ever to hear the Word of God and hear the commandments given. Every other religion has been one man listening and one man hearing. We heard it as a nation. We heard it as 1,800,000 people. And that's the Torah we have today. And it's not old. So they gave me that, and I started studying, and I liked it. And then one day, the pastor called me in his office. This is about 1986, 87. He calls me in his office. Meanwhile, now we grew a lot. In 1985, he called me in his office, and he said, "You know what? You look like you're good for this. Maybe you should go to Bible college, and maybe you should, get ordained." And I said, "Well, I have time. I work all day. I help you at night. I help you on Sunday. He said, "Just go a couple of nights a week. You'll like it." And I said, "Okay." So I tried it out a couple of nights a week, and I went to a Bible college in California at night. And meanwhile, he gave me more jobs, and now I was teaching. Not only I didn't have Sunday school. My wife had Sunday school. I didn't have the regular members of the church. I was teaching by this time, 1987, the leaders of the church. There was 10 leaders besides the pastor, and I was teaching them, and then they would spread out. And so one day he came to me and he said, "I want you to learn the subject, and I want you to learn it good, and I want you to know about it better than anybody else." And I said, "Really? What is it?" And he said, "I want you to come in my office." And he opened up the Bible, and he opened up to the 3rd book of the Bible, the 3rd book of Moses, and it's called Leviticus, Vayikra. And he went to chapter 23, and he went to verses right at the beginning, and he read them, and he said, "These are the feasts of God, and these are the festivals of God." And he said, "You shall keep Shabbos forever, and you shall keep," and then it goes on, "you shall keep Passover," and then all the Jewish holidays are listed right there. And he said, "I want you to learn Passover, and I want you to know all about it." And I said, "Wow, this is great." And I really got to say it. I said, "But the Old Testament doesn't pertain. Why do I have to know about Passover?" He said, "Because our leader, our leader was arrested. His last meal was a Passover meal. He had a Passover Seder." I said, "Really?" He said, "And if he did it, we want to know what he did and why he did it and why his disciples did it." And I said, but what does that got to do with us? Because if he did it, it's important to us. I said, okay. He said, you find out everything about it. Fine. And I ran out of there excited now. Now, the only thing I knew at that time about the Last Supper was the picture by Leonardo da Vinci. And Leonardo da Vinci has a picture on the wall there, and he's got a table like this, white, and he's got a couple of guys standing around. And they got some candlesticks on it, I think. And then they got a bottle of wine, a couple of bottles of wine, and then they got some loaves of challah, which is leavened bread, right? And if you have, as a Jewish family, if you have challah on your Passover table, you got a problem, there's a big problem. There's not supposed to be challah on the table, and that's the only thing I knew. We in Christianity got a lot of things from big artists and painters. The devil with the tail and the pitchfork, that came from another place. But that's all I knew. But I went into the church library and I said, I'll find a book. Amazingly enough, there is not in a Christian church, you can't find some kind of book to teach you how to keep Passover. I don't know why, but they don't have it. So you look up and down and you don't find anything. And then you try a little bit. And then, I got this bright idea. And I dialed the phone one morning. Hello, Rabbi? Rabbi, can you help me? And the rabbi said, who's this? I said, please, Rabbi, I want to learn how to keep Passover. He said, who's this? And I told him again. He said, you know what? You guys are doing it right the way you are. Leave us alone. And he hung up the phone. So now, I can't find the book. I can't find the rabbi. None of the pastors know about it. Who's going to teach me? But my wife has always been in the retail. Doesn't manage big clothing stores and malls or private boutiques, but she managed stores. And she always came in. God, there are a lot of people. But one day she comes home all excited. She said, we're going to learn how to keep Passover. I said, what? She said, I met some people and they said they're going to send me a book. I said, really? And I started to get excited. I'm going to learn how to keep Passover? How's this going to happen? And she said, the book is coming. They mail it. They said, it'll take 2 days to get here. And we waited and waited. And then a couple of days later, here comes the mail. And here comes, all the little envelopes. And then there's one little envelope about this big, about this wide, and she said, there it is, that stays there. And I said, in this little envelope, I'm going to learn how to do Passover. We need a big book. And she said, no, in that little envelope will be there. And so we opened up the envelope, and I opened it up. I had no idea. And I opened the first page, and there it was, a little round circle, a plate, with all the little foods on it. And then the next page is the step 1, you wash your hands, and then step 2, you do this blessing. All the 15 steps of Passover. And Jewish people would know what it was immediately, a Passover Haggadah, but I had no idea what it was. And so I looked through it, I said, wow, we can learn. And then I turned to the last page, and the best thing that ever happened, I said, this is a gold mine. On the last page of this book, it said, for all your Jewish supplies, for all your Jewish needs, call Art Scroll, call Maznayim, call JP Press. And I said, wow, this is great. This is unbelievable. Now I can really start learning. And so the next morning, I couldn't wait to get up the next morning. I dialed New York, and I said, hello, lady. And there's a Jewish lady on the other side of New York, and she's got a nice Jewish New York accent. And she says, can I help you? And I said, yeah, you sure can. And I said, she said, how can I help you? I said, I want to buy a Bible. And there was sudden quiet on the phone. And the lady says, a Bible? What's a Bible? I said, it's got the 5 books of Moses in it. She said, oh, you want a Chumash? I said, yeah, that's what I want, a Chumash. And then I said, but did you have something like with the prophets, like Jeremiah, Isaiah? I want to learn those too. And she said, oh yeah, you want a Chumash with a Haftorah? I said, that's what it is. I send it, please, lady. And then I said, oh, by the way, do you have something I want to learn how to pray? He said, I want to learn how to pray. She said, oh, you want a siddur? I said, yeah, send me a siddur, please. That'll be great. And she took the credit card and everything, and then they sent it. A couple of days later, it came. And in 1987, that started on me on a learning career. And 15 hours a day, I would get up 4:30 in the morning and start learning at my dining room table. My wife would bring me breakfast, lunch, and dinner at the table. That would work most of the time, unless I had to go give a class somewhere, or go to a church service, or go visit somebody in the hospital, something like that. Some duty came up. But most of the time, I was at that. You can find me at that table learning. And I took out the Chumash, the Jewish Bible, and I opened it up, and I took out the Siddur, and I took out the King James Authorized. And I took my red, green, blue, and orange pencils, and I started it, in the beginning, God, in the beginning, God. And I took terms like salvation and redemption and faith, emunah, and trust, bitachon. And I was saying, wait a minute, the terms and what we're supposed to do with these terms in Christianity don't match the Jewish terms. And if we're Judeo-Christians, something's up. And I started highlighting, and then I started finding discrepancies every day. And I said, wow, there's something up here. I don't know what it is, and meanwhile, I'm learning how to do Passover. And so wind up the clock a little bit. And one day I walked into the 10 leaders of the church, and I said, "Excuse me," and questions again. Questions get you in trouble. I said, "How many commandments are there?" And they said, 10. I said, "Could you name the 10 commandments?" And they got a little bounced up on the first two with the one God. I said, "Never mind that one." I said, "Don't worry about the one God one. How many do we keep?" And they said, "We keep 10. I said, "We keep 10 commandments?" They said, "Yeah." I said, "We keep Shabbat? Do we keep Shabbos?" And they said, "Yeah, we keep Shabbos." I said, "When do we keep Shabbos?" They said, "Sunday." I said, "Sunday? Who made it Sunday? All the Jewish books I got said it's Saturday. Who changed it?" They said, "We don't know. That's the way it's been for 2,000 years. Just leave it alone." I said, "Okay." And so I walked out of there more frustrated. That's why I went home. And I said, "I don't know. I have no idea." And I said, "I don't know. I got Jewish books, I got Christian books, and I don't know what's up." I said, "But I know what we're doing. I know we're doing some holidays here. So I'll go in Encyclopedia Britannica." So I went in Encyclopedia Britannica, and I wanted to look up some days. And I said, "What is Sunday and Monday?" Sunday happens to be the birthday of the Roman sun god, or the worship of the Roman sun god. Monday is the moon god. And I said, and what's their birthdays? Oh, December 24th and 25th. So I went to December 24th and 25th and said, "What's this day about?" And I said, number one at that time was the worship of the moon god and the sun god. And I said, wow. And number two was Gad and Mini, two gods that were worshipped in Assyria way before the first temple. And the prophet Isaiah warned not to worship those two gods. Same birthday, different names. And then third place was the leader of the Christianity. He was born on that day, and that was his birthday. I said, "How come everybody's got the same birthday? It doesn't work." I said, "Why does my God have the same birthday as these guys?" I said, I don't know. Why isn't my God number one?" And I said, "Okay." So I went back to these guys, and I told them. And I said, "There's something wrong with these days." And they said, "There's something wrong with you." And they said, "Are you losing your mind?" And I said, "Yeah, well, maybe." So I went, and they said to me, the pastor's son got up. Well, right before this, though, I was home, and my wife went to work, and my wife said, "If we find anything here that you want to change our lives with, you don't do anything until you show me first. And when I see it and we both agree with it, then we'll change." I said, "Okay." So she left for work that day, and I was there. And for me to take a rest from all Torah learning, I just go and learn some prophet. That's a rest for me, So I went and I looked, and I found Jeremiah. And I went and I looked in Jeremiah, and there I was, chapter 1, 2. And I got to chapter 10, and it says, verse 1 and 2, "Don't take on the ways of the other nations." So now this is the prophet talking. He's talking for God, and he's talking to the Jewish people, and we're Judeo-Christian. And it said, "Don't take on the ways of the other nations." And then they go out in the field and they cut down a tree and they bring it in the house, and then they worship it, and they also decorate it. And I had a Jewish commentary by this time, and the commentary, that had Sansino with the Radak was the commentator, and the Radak said, he said, "Yeah, they go and they cut the tree, put it in the house, but they decorate it because they worship all the planets. So they put these little round balls on the tree, and each one is for a planet. And they put a star on top. And there I was in my living room, and I'm looking, because it was that time of the year, and there was a green tree in my living room in the bay window, and then a star on top with lights flashing and all little balls on it." And he said, "Don't be like that." And he said, "Don't do that." And I looked at that and I said, "Oh no." And I froze, because Sarah Devorah, my wife, said, "Don't do anything till you see me." And so there I was, and I sat there and I froze. And then she came in the house and she said to me, "What did you do?" I said, "Nothing." She said, "What are you going to do?" "Nothing." So she come over and she says, "Show me." So I show her, and she reads exact what I read. And she looks at that thing. She says, "What were you waiting for?" I said, "You told me not to do anything." So we walked over there together, and we unplugged it, and we picked it up and threw it out on the front lawn. Now, the prophet said don't do it. God says don't do it. That's fine. But now when you're the co-pastor in the community, the green thing don't look good laying down on the front lawn. And it doesn't go over good. So there we were. We put it out there. And then I went back a couple of days later, and I went back to these guys, and I was telling them some more stuff. And then one guy, the pastor's son, did stand up, and he said, "Now, you're going to tell me next that there's a problem with Easter Sunday." And I said, "Now that you asked me, I can tell you." I said, "Yeah, there is a problem." I said, "Did you ever hear of Ashtarte, Ishtarte, Eshtarte, Ishtar?" And he said, "No." I said, "Well, those are all goddesses that came from Assyria and Babel and Persia, and they got to Egypt. And Ishtar sounds like Easter. And then when Greece took over, and then when Rome took over, they called it Easter. And I said, Easter, you know what that refers to, Ishtar? It's resurrection life. It's new life. It's born again. It's and they have bunny rabbits running around the church, and I said, you guys convince me that bunny rabbits lay eggs. And we got green grass, and it's all about fertility and new life and resurrection life. And I said, you know where she lives? You know who she is? She's the goddess of fertility. And you know where she lives? She lives in the Nile River, in an egg. That's why we have our kids playing with the eggs on Easter Sunday. And I said, there's something wrong. And they all stood up. They went and got the pastor. They said, this guy's lost his mind. And the co-pastor of the church now. And they said, that's it. And so they took away all my teaching jobs, all my responsibility. I was allowed to call people from the back room for events, and that's all I was allowed to do. And it was 2 years, 1990 to 1992. And then one day in around 1992, the end of 91, I got a call from a guy. And he said, Pastor, I've been to California on business a lot, and I heard some of your teachings, and I really like what you have to say. And we have people out here, we have a church out here in Oklahoma, are willing to listen to what you have to say and what you have, and we're willing to buy books and learn, and we want to do it. He said, will you come and be a pastor of our church? And I said, I don't know. I'd have to ask my wife first. No, I wasn't doing nothing there, so I went and got my wife, and Oklahoma. Anyway, so he said, I told my wife, and she said, what do we got to lose? Let's go. So we went, and we went there in the beginning of 1992. And we walked into the house, and there was a table with some food on it, a guy and his wife. That guy called me. I knew him and his wife, and then his little girls, met them. And then I was walking around, and I said, something wrong, Pastor? I said, is there anybody else in this congregation? And he said, yeah, there's another family, but they couldn't make it. Another family? You brought me all the way out here to Oklahoma, and you and another family, and that's your congregation? I thought you said you had a big congregation that, you want to learn this stuff. He said, yeah, we will have a big congregation. You can do it. I'm telling you, there's a lot of people here that's willing to do this. I felt like, I don't know, a Chabad Shliach going to some city in the United States in the middle of nowhere and starting, So me and my wife started. And we started making phone calls and putting flyers out and said, we're not going to teach the normal Christian way. We're going to teach from what we called it the Old Testament. And we're going to teach the 5 books of Moses. When we're going to start with Shabbat. And we're going to start with, and then we're going to do Pesach. And we're going to learn Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. And we're going to buy books. You're going to buy books. I'm going to buy books. And we're going to learn 2 to 3 hours a night, 3 nights a week, and 3 hours on Sunday. Not the 20-minute normal Bible study that you're used to. And if you don't want, and you shouldn't believe what I say. You shouldn't believe what I get up and say, this is what it's. No, you have to read it for yourself and believe it, and we have to do it together. And the people started to agree, and we went, and we built up, and it took us 3 years, and we went from a house to a storefront, and we went to a biggest hotel they had, and then we went and we got a church. We rented a church, and we had 125 families in less than 3 years. And Art Scroll was just starting up at that time, and they didn't even have a catalog, and we were calling Art Scroll, I was calling Art Scroll, they were calling Art Scroll. Art Scroll got rich off our church, and and we were buying everything that we can get our hands on. Every new edition of something that came out, I bought it. And then when they sent me a catalog, it was, oh boy, that was the greatest thing. But we were in Oklahoma. And Oklahoma, I don't know if you know where Oklahoma is. It's in the middle of the United States. And it's right in the middle of the states, right here, and it's along this line that runs like this, and they call it the Bible Belt. It's the heaviest place concentrated with Christians, and there we were, and me and my wife call it the Bible Buckle because it's right in the middle, and there we were in the Bible Buckle, and we were doing this, and the first year we were there, my wife made Passover Seder for 200 Southern Baptists. And they came. And it was a great one. Except that's the only time they ever came. They came one time and that was it. But that's all right. We started making it for our own congregation. But I'll tell you why we were South Oklahoma. And in Southern Oklahoma, in this town we were in, there was 23,000 people. 20,000 Southern Baptists. Now, most Christian organizations are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And they're learning and they're worshiping their God. But the Southern Baptists came up with a plan. Now there's 20,000 in this town. And already they don't like what I'm doing. And so 20,000, but Southern Baptists, and I tell the kids in the colleges in America because it's big, and it's big in Israel now. Southern Baptists came up with a plan in 1985, to authenticate their Bible and to make their half of the Bible real and to bring back their Messiah, they needed to convert Jews. So they came up with a plan and they funded a plan to convert Jews. And the first plan failed. And they came up with a second plan, and the second plan failed. And they came up with a third plan, and it's still going today. And the third plan is called the organization Jews for J. And their Southern Baptists are the ones that fund it. Southern Baptists started it. Now they join forces with the World Evangelical Organization and the Assembly of God. Up until 2-3 years ago, and I have all the papers, I left them in America, but up until 2-3 years ago, they had budgeted $200 million a year to convert Jews. And that's their target. And now, together, they have $300 million. And in Israel, there is now one Messianic congregation in every major city. And they're in the major street corners on the major highways, proselytizing openly, and nobody's doing nothing about it. And in the 20 congregations, they've managed to convert, which is almost an impossibility. It can't really happen, but Jews go, and they call themselves Christians, and they managed to convert in Israel in the last couple of years 20,000 Jews. And in America, it's over 300,000. And they are going on every college campus. They're in every major city, and they need to do it, and they're doing it. And we need to train our children, and that's why we go to college campuses, and that's why we go wherever we can go to talk. We need to have the Jewish people train their children, their grandchildren. They need to get rabbis. They need to be part of a congregation. They need to go to day schools. They need to go to Hebrew school. They need to go to yeshivas, because when we learn our Torah, when we really learn the books that Moshe wrote, that God gave Moses, and that our rabbis teach us, when we learn that and our children learn that, somebody can come up and say, this is what your Bible says, this is what your Torah says, and you can look at them and say, no, I know what my Torah says, and this is not what my Torah says. And there's no debate, there's no arguing, and it's not that we're going to debate or have a big war. No, I know mine, and this is mine, and this is what my God says, and you have to do what your God says. But as a Jew, I have to do the Torah, and you walk away. But if we don't know our Torah, which is happening in a lot of colleges in the United States, the kids don't know their Torah, and when they come up, it looks good, it looks real, it looks Jewish. I'll go do it. And so they do. And anyway, the Jesus guy was a Jew, So that's why I tell that part of the story. But so we learned, and then one day, my wife and I, we had bought books on how to keep a Shabbos. And all the books about Shabbos, and all the other books were mine. But we learned how to make challah. We learned about lighting the candles on Shabbos, about doing the blessing for Shabbos and lighting the candles, about making kiddush on wine, about what the foods, the chicken and the fish and everything on the table that you need. And we knew everything there was. We knew how to do l'chai dodi. We knew how to welcome the Shabbos. We knew how to say Shema. We had to do Shmoni Esrei because we bought prayer books on when Shabbos comes. And so we decided we were going to keep Shabbos, and we weren't going to tell anybody, and nobody had to do it, just us. And so in our house in Oklahoma, there we were. We made a Shabbos. We made a Shabbos dinner. We made our own challah, and it was Friday afternoon. And then all we had is books. And so my wife said, "Okay, we're getting ready. Shabbos is coming." I said, "Yeah, Shabbos is Saturday." And she said, "Right, and that's tonight." "Yeah, and what time does it start?" "I don't know." And well, how do you know what time it starts? I said, well, the rabbis tell us in the books that when 3 stars come out, that means it's 3 stars out. That means it's really night, and that means it's already the next day. So Friday night turns to Saturday, and then it's Shabbos. So she said, how are we going to do? I said, we go out on the back patio, and we look for 3 stars. When we see 3 stars, for sure it's Shabbos. And there was me and my wife, and then we went in the back on the patio, and we held hands, and we started singing and dancing. Shabbos is coming. Shabbos is coming. Shabbos is coming. Oh, please. Oh, this is so great. And there we are, spinning around. And then my wife is crying. I'm crying. And then we stop. And then my wife says, God, what are you doing? Why are you showing us this? Why did you choose us? Who are we? We're nobody. What are you doing to us? And they said, never mind. Thank you so much. Shabbos is coming. And we danced and danced. And the first star came out. Oh, Shabbos. Second star, Shabbos. And then third star, Shabbos is here. Shabbos is here. Oh, we went. And then we ran in the house. Oh, and we ran by this. Oh, it smelled good. Oh, and we ran to the table. And my wife put a little scarf on. And she gets the matches. Boom. And she lights the candles. And she does a beautiful blessing over the lighting of the candles. And then we grab hands and we sing and we dance. And because we had every Jewish tape going that you could have on the stereo by this time. And there was nobody There was not one. We didn't have. Nobody told us you can't light the Shabbos candles after Shabbos starts. You can't. Nobody told us that you can't play music on Shabbos. We had no clue. All we had was books, and you can't learn it from books. You need a rabbi. You need a rebbitzin. You need Jewish brothers and sisters. You need your mother and father. You need the grandfather to teach you. That's how you learn it. You don't learn it just by being in your, a lone ranger. And so there, we just kept going. And that day and the next day, oh boy, I had all my Jewish books. And I was sitting up on the couch on Saturday, and it was such a great day. You just learn. You don't answer the phone. You don't go driving your car. Oh, this is nice. And then Shabbos was over, and that Shabbos was so great. And the next day when we went to church, it was unbelievable. We got to church, and there we were. We had a regular church service, and then at the end, usually have somebody make the announcements. But when there's a problem, when somebody's in trouble, the pastor makes the announcements. So I got up and I said, I'll make the announcements today. And I looked at the whole full congregation, and I said, please, next week, don't come to church. And everybody looked like that, and they said, what? I said, don't come to church. The church is closed. What do you mean closed? I said, yeah, please, come Friday night at 7 and come Saturday at 10. We're having Shabbat services in this church from now on. And the people said, what? And we went outside, and we went on the main highway of the Southern Baptist town. Now, the main highway to Southern Baptist, everybody had to pass that church to go in and out of that town. And I painted that sign that day. Shabbos services, Friday night 7, Saturday at 10. Everybody's welcome. And there we were. And my wife went home, and Chabad has this thing called Shabbos Companion now, where they help you get along with the Shabbos service. My wife made Shabbos Companions back then, and we used the art scroll, and we put in there all the prayers, all the singing for Shabbos, all the blessings that you need for Shabbos, L'kai Dodi Yeshes Kyle, everything you need, the Shema, everything. And we made challah for everybody. We made chicken for everybody, and we had a beautiful view. We're all set up in the church for Shabbos, and here comes Friday night, and we have Shabbos services. Friday night, Saturday, everything is great except for one thing. We lost half the people in the congregation because they were willing to learn a lot, but then they didn't have to do it, and they don't have to keep Shabbos unless you're Jewish. And so these people said, no more, that's enough for us. This guy is losing a little bit. So half the congregation left. When you lose half the congregation, you lose half the money coming in to keep the lights on. But we said, we got to keep going. We got to keep going. We have something inside that me and my wife tell us we got to keep doing this. And now we started to get phone calls in the middle of the night. Are you Jewish? We don't want your kind in this town. What are you doing here? We don't teach from the Old Testament. This is a New Testament city. What are you doing that stuff for? We're supposed to be teaching faith. And all night, every night, and then worse, and then, people in the streets. And then you start to lose friends. And your colleagues, the other pastors in town, stop talking to me. And then the neighborhood, big community leaders stop talking to you. And then you start to lose family a little bit. And you start to lose brothers and sisters a little bit. And you're losing half your congregation. And then you decide you're going to keep Rosh Hashanah for 2 days. And then you lose more people. And then one day you come, we're going to keep Yom Kippur. And, the big prayer book we got, bring it. We're going to fast. They said, how long? I said, I don't know. 24 hours. The rabbis say add a little bit. I'll add an hour in the front, hour in the back, 26 hours. And we started Friday night, and we fasted all day on Shabbos, on Yom Kippur. But there wasn't that many people left. And so now they're looking at me, and it's getting dark, and they said, Pastor, when do we eat? I said, I don't know. Tomorrow. They said, when's tomorrow? I said, we got to go outside, and we got to look at the 3 stars. When we see 3 stars, it's over. And there we were. The whole congregation now is outside looking for 3 stars. 3 stars come, and everybody gets in the car, drive down the highway, and I'm following, and everybody turns in, and the last car in, and look up and says, welcome to Burger King. We had a beautiful Jewish fast, but we didn't know how to break the fast, and we ate non-kosher food. But we had a beautiful day, And so then we kept going. I built a sukkah on the main street in town. And then one day I walked in, and I walked in with I bought the new set, all the halakhas by the Rambam, and I brought in all the laws about the Mashiach, right, the Messiah. And I said, I found out today. I said, our leader can't be the Messiah. He doesn't fit the qualifications. Oh boy! And so more people left. And then I walked in one day and I said, God, is God a man? And they said, what are you asking that for? I said, because it said in Deuteronomy, God is not a man that he should lie. Oh, man, I said, so our leader can't be God. He could be a good Jewish boy, but he's not God. And more people left. And then I said, there's no vicarious sacrifice. According to the book of Ezekiel, it says, A man can't die for his son. A father can't die for his son. A son can't die for his father's sins. A man dies for his own sins. I said, so there's no vicarious sacrifice. So he can't die for our sins. So he's not the savior of the world. Oh boy, And then one day I walked in. I said, who changed everything? I found out, Constantine, a Roman emperor, 329, the Council of Nicaea. That's who made Sunday. That's who said what the New Testament was canon. This guy, a Roman emperor, he baptized all his troops. He wanted to have a big nation, and he wanted Christianity to be the national religion of Rome. He gets more people. Everybody's going on the same days. They just changed the God's name, and everybody goes the same day, same holiday. I said, this book, it's not holy. And I said, that guy wasn't holy. Our rabbis checked every dot, every letter, everything, to make sure our Torah scroll is holy, passed down. And I said, this is a Roman governor telling us what's holy? I said, we can't believe this is a holy book. And I said, maybe it's a history book. Oh boy, more people. And then I kept going. And then I talked about the false prophet. And then one day I had some tapes by Rabbi Tovia Singer, who does outreach Judaism, trying to get our boys and girls back from Christianity. And he said, I want to tell you that our Torah was changed on purpose. To make the New Testament fit and to look like it was part of the Old Testament, they have a line of what they call scripture, and they say, it says here, offerings and sacrifices I don't want. I prepared a body for you. Go see Tehillim. Go see Psalms in the front half of the book, and they match it for you. And you go there, and it looks good. It says the same thing. Oh wow! So he did that. I said, but that body they prepared for you was Mr. JC. So I said, okay. So now, but Tovia Singer said, now read it in the Hebrew. You find out something. Offers and sacrifices I don't want. He said, I prepared something for you. And I said, I prepared aznayim for you, Tehillim 40. They translated aznayim, which is ears, to body, so it would fit the New Testament. When they changed our Torah, that's it. I couldn't take it anymore. I went and told my wife, that's it. It's over. They can do anything they want. They can make all the changes. We can fix all the changes. But when they have to change the Word of God, which is the Word says, do not add to, do not subtract, do not change it, that's it. There's something wrong when you're changing. And I said, that's all over. And there was a couple of more instances where they changed it. And we went that night and closed the church. And what families were left, we said, I don't know what I'm doing. I know what you're doing. But to us, we felt like there's nothing left. We had nothing, no foundation, no Torah, no Bible, no God, no nothing. And the only thing I had left was my wife. It was me and my wife because our family left us. Our brothers and sisters wouldn't talk to us. All the pastors wouldn't. We had nothing. And we were down upon our money. And so we went home, and my wife was crying, and we said, what do we do now? She said, I don't know. What should we do? She said, maybe we should convert. Okay. I said, but nobody's going to convert us. The rabbis don't want to talk to us. And we used to go to Dallas, Texas. In the middle of all this, we used to drive 3.5 hours one way to buy kosher food. 7-hour trip once a month with 3 coolers for meat, dairy, and regular food. And in Texas, we used to see Jewish people. And we used to go to synagogues, and we used to talk in stores. And to talk to a Jewish person to us was the most beautiful thing in the world. Something inside jumped up inside. And when we saw little kids walking down the street, look at the beautiful Jewish children. We went by Jewish schools. We went into synagogues. We went into Jewish stores. And we would just want to be around the Jews. And inside it was trembling. And we would cry and say how beautiful. We wanted to be around the Jewish people. And then we went, and I called the rabbi in Dallas. I said, can you help me? I want to convert. And I told him some of the story. And he said, I can't help you. Go to Denver. What do you mean Denver? I want to go with the Jewish people. He said, go to Denver. The rabbi will help you. I went to another rabbi. I called him. I drove 3.5 hours to his house, and he told me, I can't help you. Go to Denver. We called the rabbi in Denver. Now, this is our last chance. And if you get a rabbi and he says no, and we have nothing, and we don't know what it would be. But the rabbi in Denver listened a little bit, and he said, are you the head of the church? I said, I was the head of the church. And he said, I'll talk to you. Come and see me. And he made an appointment. We drove 13.5 hours to Denver. We got there. We were right on time. And the rabbi was 2.5 hours late. He came in the office. He came in the door, and he had this big smile. Sorry, folks, I'll be right with you, okay? I said, okay, yeah. And he goes in his office, and there I was sitting next to my wife, and I started to shake. And then she says, what's the matter? I said, Sarah Devorah, all our studies, I know we went through it all, but we want to be Orthodox because that's what we want to be. And I said, but did you see the guy? And she said, yeah. I said, yeah? The guy with the big black hat? The guy with the big beard? The guy with the long black coat? I said, I know those guys. They're from Brooklyn. They're overboard. Those are Meshuggah. I want to be Orthodox, but those guys are nuts. I said, that's too much for me. And she said, no, let's go in. We'll talk to them. They'll be fine. And so I went in and talked to this Rabbi Twersky. And my wife talked to Rabbi. 2 hours of an emotional talk. And he said, you guys come whenever you want. And we went home. Right on the way out of there, before we went home, we started singing, we're going to be Jews. And for the rest of the next year and a half, we were going to be Jews. And we rented an apartment for $1,000 a month. We had to give it $3,000. And we went home and we got a moving van right away and said, get me to Denver in 2 weeks. I told Letty to be back in 2 weeks. We gave him $2,000. And in our bank account, my wife told me, now I was crazy. My wife telling me I was Meshuggah. She said, you only have $1,000 left to your name. What are you doing? I said, we got to go. And so we got in the car and we went. And we got there 2 weeks on time. And I walked in the synagogue in the morning at 6:30, and it was 6:45 prayer services in the morning. And the rabbi walked in. I was the only one right there at the start. And he turned around and he said, what are you doing here? And I said, what? And I wasn't going to take it. And I jumped up. And I said, you told me to come. And he said, yeah, I tell a lot of people to come, but they never show up. He said, calm down, and we start here in the beginning of the service, and we go. And I went to Shakris, and I went to afternoon prayer and night prayer. Every day, me and my wife, we didn't miss a service. We didn't miss a Shabbos service or a Yontif. And we went to classes. He set classes up with me and him and other rabbis and the community members, one-on-one, women's groups, men's groups, and we learned day. As much as we wanted to learn, we could learn. And they were teaching us all the basic laws. And then one day my wife comes and said, we need some money. And I said, I'm an engineer, but I put in my applications. Nobody's calling me. And she said, we need some money to eat. And I said, okay. So I went and I found a job for UPS. And I was loading UPS trucks from midnight to 6 in the morning, $10 an hour. So I can learn all day and never miss a service. And it worked for a while until my wife said, that's not enough to pay the rent. So I said, I don't know. I can build buildings, build bridges, highways, anything. I said, okay, I'll paint. And so I started ads in the new community. I started painting houses. I painted from 8 to 4. Then I went home and I made the services. And then we ate dinner. Then we went back and we learned and we studied. And then at 10 o'clock I went home. I slept till 11. 11 I went to UPS because we wanted to be part of the greatest nation in the world. And there we were. And it took over about a year. And I lost 40 pounds in a year. My wife didn't recognize me. The rabbi didn't recognize me. And we going to go do it. And we learned and learned. And they never tell you. And they want to push you away. And they want you to quit. But you never give up. You got to keep going. And that's who we are. And that's who we are as a nation. We keep going. We keep popping up. We keep growing. And nobody can ever get rid of us. And so there he was. And he said, okay, are you ready to go to the court? And we said, yeah, we're going to go to the court. And you sit in front of 3 rabbis. And they ask you questions. And they told us Monday morning. And we went Monday morning and said, we're going to be Jews Monday. We're going to be Jews on Monday. And then we sat there in front of these 3 rabbis. And the rabbis started, and the 3 of them said, okay, started asking questions all about the Shabbat. And all about Shabbos. And what do you do? What happens if the gas goes out? Well, can you take a pot off the stove? Can you stir a pot that's on the stove? What about the lights? And all these questions on the laws of Shabbat, 3 hours. And he said, wow. And then they got these big smiles. Thank you so much. Yeah. And he said, yeah. And he said, see you next week. What do you mean next week? Today we're supposed to be finished. He said, no, not you guys. Next week. Okay. Came back next week and all the laws of koshering, 3 hours. And next week. And not next week wasn't always next week because 3 rabbis can't agree on meeting all the time. And they're always going out of town, here, out of there. Over 3.5 months, we went 6 times, 18 hours in front of these guys. Questions on basic Judaism and family purity. And finally, after the 6th time, they said, okay, you can go to the mikveh tomorrow. You can go become Jews tomorrow. And we didn't sleep all night. We're going to be Jews. We're going to be Jews. And we got there. In the morning, we beat the rabbis to the mikveh. And she was on the women's side, I was on the men's side. And I'm taking off my clothes. And I want to go in the water. And they said, wait a minute, we got some questions. Questions, you asked me enough. I want to go in the water. And they said, don't you want a cheeseburger? No, I don't want a cheeseburger. I want to go in the water. And then he said, wait, Mr. Big Pastor, you go in the water, you're only going to come out a simple pashut yid, a simple yid. No more big pastor. I don't care. I'd rather be a simple yid, a simple Jew than anything else in the world. Let me in the water. And they said, one more question. Well, don't you want to be a Noahide? Why do you want to take 613 commandments? Just do 7. I told you last year. Why do you bother me now? I want to go in. So I go in the water. I'm standing there. And they say, we'll be right back. And they go on the other side. And they talk to my wife. And they come back. And they say, oh, Mr. Pastor, I have to tell you something. If you go in the water, you come out Jewish. Yeah, good. And they said, but we don't know what's happening over there. And if your wife goes in the water, it doesn't go in the water, she's not Jewish. And then you're not married to each other. And you can't marry her. I said, I don't care. That's our problem. I'm going in the water. And then they said the same thing to my wife. And she said, we did this together. And they said the same thing. She said, I don't care, that's his problem. But they did come back with one. They almost got me. And they said, you go in the water, you're Jewish. She goes in and out of the water, she's Jewish. You're not legally married to each other anymore, halakhically, and you're not married to each other. And you don't have to marry each other. And my wife liked that part. And I paid for that part because we had like 3 months of separation. We made it 6, but because we wanted to go to Yerushalayim to get married. But 3 months of separation, And she said, you want to marry me? Yeah. You have flowers tonight? Well, we're going to go out to dinner tomorrow night? I need to do a piece of jewelry. Oh, man. Yeah. But we did get married, and here we are. But when we got dressed, we went over to the table, and the rabbis were standing there. And they ask you your name, what name you pick. And I picked my name. And sometimes they want to change your name. Sometimes they want to question why you picked that name. And I said, okay. I want Yaakov Ephraim, and they said, Yaakov Ephraim. And they said, okay, and Sarah Devorah. And then they picked me up, and they started twirling me around, dancing, Simon Tov, and Mazel Tov, and Simon Tov. And then they said, Yaakov Ephraim, do you know that you were at Mount Sinai over 3,000 years ago? Do you know that you were always Jewish? Do you know you heard the Ten Commandments with all the other Jewish people, you and your wife, Sarah Devorah, Mazel Tov, and Simon Tov? And I said, Rabbi, what are you doing? What are you, crazy? I said, you put me through a year and a half of torture, and now you tell me I'm always Jewish? And they said, no, we just found out when you finished coming out of the mikveh. And that started the greatest life of being Jewish, of being part of the Jewish nation, of being part of the most special people on the face of the earth, of people that have a mission on this world to make this place a dwelling place for Hashem, to change the world, to change your brothers and sisters, to keep Torah, to do mitzvahs, to connect to Hashem, and be good to each other. The Rebbe said, do one mitzvah, one. I'm not asking it. I fell in a mikvah, come out with a big white beard. No, you don't have to do it all. Just do one. And if you keep Shabbos once a month, keep it twice a month. If you give 5 cents to the tzedakah, give $500. I don't know, $1. And if you don't learn anything during the week with the Torah, with the Rebbe, call the Rabbi. He'll be glad to learn with you. One mitzvah, the Rebbe said, one mitzvah can change the world, and love one another. Don't talk about one another. Be good to another. We can bring the Mashiach, because you, inside of you have a responsibility. That's why you were born Jews. You have a responsibility to the world. You have a responsibility to our God. You have a responsibility to each other. You can change the world. You are the most precious people on the face of the earth, and we're glad to be Jews. We're glad that we joined this nation, and we're proud to be Jews. And we were Jews then. We were born Jews. We came out of the mikveh Jews, and now we keep going. And you guys are stuck with me and my wife for the rest of your lives. L'chaim, l'chaim.